Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. There are coaches for everything. We've got life coaches, diet coaches, sports coaches, on and on and on. I had no idea that there was a coach for real estate. If you want to up your game as a real estate agent, I found your guy. Mike Fiddler joins us today to help you through that. Mike, how you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it. Appreciate the kind words to start.
Wonderful to have you on here. It's so, I believe things happen for a reason. I joined a men's group recently, about 3 weeks ago, and we had a meeting last night, and we always have commitments. You have a week. What are you going to do with your week? What are you committed to? And out of the 9 men, 2 of them said, I am working on my real estate license. I need to move my life forward in that direction. Not even kidding. Yeah.
Yeah. You never know.
So with you, would you start at the beginning there as well? Or is it only established real estate agents that you train and coach?
I don't help them to get their license.
Okay.
I could direct them on where to go. Obviously, there are licensing schools all over the country, but once they get their license, what my job is to teach them how to make money. So, because there's a lot of people that don't make much.
Yeah. And I'm going to share with you, part of my family was very much into real estate, having an agency, real estate agency. My aunt, very successful. My mom was in it. And I remember when I was in my 20s, my aunt said to me, get into real estate. You should be doing real estate. And at that time, I was hanging out with my friends, drinking a beer, whatever. Mm-hmm. I regret it. I do, because I see what the potential was. It just wasn't my thing at the time, but never too late. For you coaching, and I want to go, your backstory is very impactful. We're going to get to that in a moment. But in terms of you coaching, what are some of the things that you help your clients with?
Biggest thing is accountability. You get so many agents. I mean, this is why a lot of people come to me. I'll get agents that were with other coaches, and the first thing they talk to me about is, I need you to hold me accountable. My last coach didn't do that. And so I like to tell them, listen, if you want somebody that's going to tell you what you want to hear, I'm not the guy. But if you want somebody that's going to tell you the truth and hold you to what you set for your own goals, then we should definitely talk.
Let's hear your story.
Well, I got into real estate just like most people. It was a part-time gig. I was actually a third shifter working as a tool and die maker, which is about as far away from real estate as you can get. And my next door neighbor happened to be a broker. And we talked, and next thing you know, he's like, you could make some part-time money doing this. And I was looking for that. My wife was a stay-at-home mom, and I had 2 kids. And I thought it'd be just a nice little side gig. And the problem had come actually in the plant that I was at, because in order for me to move up, they said I needed a college degree, which I never got. And it was probably the best thing I could have done, not get that degree. Because if I had it, they'd have moved me up and I'd probably still be working at that company. But because I didn't, I got into real estate, finally got some training, and nothing stopped me after that. That was just it was just a crazy ride, because once I got trained and realized what I could do, we didn't have to worry about anything at home. The kids never had to worry about anything. I made whatever I needed to make. And
wow,
it just kind of kept taking off.
Wow, that's exciting. Just knowing that and I can feel the passion in you. It's almost as if the door opened and you ran through the door of real estate. What bit you right away in the beginning of it? Aside from it being lucrative at the time, what was it?
Actually, I think the biggest challenge I had happened early on in my career. I had put together 2 deals, 2 sellers that both needed to buy. So I ended up with 4 deals like right away. And I thought, oh my God, this is going to be so easy. And then I probably went 3 or 4 months before I had anything happen. And so that was a real awakening for me, that the business wasn't just going to fall into your lap. You had to go get it. You had to work for it. I've never been a quitter. I'm one of those kind of guys that It doesn't. The best thing you can say to me is you can't do that, because then I will go out of my way to prove you wrong. And that's what ended up happening in real estate. The only one that supported me when I made this change was Karen, my wife. My dad, my mom, they thought I was nuts. Her mom and dad, they thought I was nuts. Everybody I talked to, you got a lucrative job. Why are you giving it up? But I didn't want her to have to go back to work. If she wanted to, that was different. But if she wanted to stay home, I wanted her to be able to do that. And the only way I was going to be able to do that was make more than I made at the old job.
Gotcha. So, well, yeah, the next year after this journey began for you, you became one of the top 10 agents in a company of over 2,000.
Yeah.
Like that.
Yeah.
Just
yeah. Well, you could say like that, but it really wasn't like quite. I heard a speaker get on stage and said, I don't think anybody in here should close less than 50 sales. And that really hit me because the last year I'd closed 6. And so I just looked at it and said, that's what I want to do. I want to hit 50. And unfortunately, I didn't have any way to do it. And on the plane ride home, I remember saying to myself, I know a lot of people from my old job. I'm going to talk to as many people as I can. I'm going to get them each to refer me just one person. And that was my thinking, was I was going to find 50 people that would refer me one person. Well, I closed 50 the next year. Actually, I closed 53 the next year. But I never got one referral from each person. But it just set in motion that relationships would always be the crux of everything I did from that point on. And that's all I teach now, is building those relationships, having other people. I don't think you need to talk about your own success. I think others will do it for you. So, that's kind of the way that went.
So with you escalating, let's be honest. All right, it wasn't overnight, but you escalated fairly fast.
Oh, yeah.
You had a mission, you were a man on a mission, and you made it happen. With a lot of that, was it due to systems you put in place that you teach now?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, everything I learned about listing and selling, I learned through a couple of different companies, but I was very fortunate, and it's not going to sound fortunate, but with the last name of Fiddler, you can imagine that as a young guy, I kind of got razzed a little bit with that last name, and it kept happening as I grew up. But one person said to me, you should start carrying a fiddle. And I was like, what? No, really, that can be a brand for you. And people will see it. Well, I ended up going out. I bought a fiddle. I had the case painted so it said sold on the outside. I even learned how to play it. At the time, one of my kids' music instructors was a friend of mine, so I had him teach me how to play it. Now, the first thing they teach you on a stringed instrument is Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. So he taught me how to play that. I went home, played it for the kids. They didn't recognize the song, and I haven't played the fiddle since. But it was a great marketing tool, because every place I went, I had that fiddle with me. And what it did, it's like any other brand. The brand doesn't sell you. The brand gets you in the door. It gets you the opportunity. Well, that fiddle started opening doors for me. They wanted to know, what was this all about? And it was something. It was a marketing. That's all it was. It was a marketing piece, but it got me in a lot of doors. And from there,
I totally relate to what you're saying. I've done radio on Long Island since I was 17. I have a marketing company. My fiddle is my radio career. But once the door opens, I have to prove what I can do on the marketing side. But that's my fiddle. And I do believe if we look, we all have a fiddle. There is something there that makes you unique, whether it's your name, whether it's your hair. My aunt, here we go. My aunt, super successful in real estate in Port Jefferson, right across from where you are in Connecticut. And she became the first ever female president of the Chamber of Commerce. And that, started elevating her. But, aside from being, great at doing what she did in real estate, her fiddle was hats. She was the hat lady. She was the tall lady with the blonde hair. Truth be told, She wore a wig, and she would always have different hats on, but they would know there's B with the hats, and that was her fiddle. So I'm glad we're talking about this, because I also believe that this is probably part of your training in terms of branding yourself and making yourself different than other real estate agents. Find your fiddle.
Yeah, absolutely. If you can't differentiate yourself, I mean, there's just so many agents out there, good, bad, or indifferent, doesn't matter. You need a way to get in the door. And my way to get in the door was I marketed the heck out of that fiddle. And
Love it.
it's just kind of funny now because so much, I mean, I ended up in fights, you name it, as a kid. I mean, that was always happening. And now,
Yeah. Use it to your advantage. And
yeah,
when you
yeah.
mentioned the fiddle thing initially, I'm thinking, yeah, really good idea. Putting sold on the case or the fiddle. I mean, there's the slam dunk, and even Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. I'm just thinking hypothetical here. If you could play that, you could change the words. Michael, Michael has a story to tell. Your house is what he wants to sell. Whatever.
Yeah, I tell the story about learning how to play the fiddle because they always ask me when they would see do you play?
Right.
Tell them that story, and that always breaks the ice with whoever I'm talking with.
Totally.
So, yeah.
What do you say to real estate agents now, where things have changed in the last couple of years, where the inventory, at least in my area, has depleted at the moment? Interest rates have gone up. It's a challenging situation for a lot of agents, but then there are other agents. I have a friend. He actually introduced me to this men's group I referred to. He's crushing it. Just sold $1 million house. Sold another one a couple of weeks ago. He works with his wife. How do you address agents that say to you, "Hey, Mr. Fiddler, what's going on here? How can I move forward in this kind of real estate climate?"
Well, that's a great question. And the first thing to mention is I know all the stats that are out there. I know everybody's saying there's a lack of inventory. I just don't believe it.
Hmm.
And they go, "Well, what do you mean?" I said, "Well, here, let me ask you this. If I could prove to you there's not a lack of inventory, I'll prove it to you. And if I do prove it to you, then from now on, you just got to have to sell the same thing I'm sharing with you." And they'll go, "Yeah, there's no way you're going to prove it." Okay. If you went into NAR stats and you looked at the number of closings there were last year, it was just over 4 million. I think it was between 4 and 5 million sales. It's like, okay. Now go into Google how many households there are. Now you can do this by USA, you can do this by state. I was just talking with some brokers. I was in Massachusetts. And so I Googled their numbers. And there are like 3 million households, but there was only like 45,000 sales. That represents about 3 to 4%. 4% of the total homes possible sold last year. That means 96% didn't. That does not sound like a lack of inventory to me. What it is, it's a lack of homes in MLS. And if that's the only way that you do business, then you feel like there's a lack of inventory. But top producers don't do that. Top producers, almost all of them, even right now, have probably got 5 or 6 homes that are ready to come on in the spring, but they're not in MLS yet. The seller has said, "I got to do this, I got to fix that, I want to paint, I want whatever," but they already know about those properties. So what I used to do when I had those was I would network to buyer agents that I worked with and said, "You know what? This one's coming up in May. This one's coming up in June. It's got 3 bedrooms, got that. It's going to be around this price range. Who do you have?" And I would get things lined up. Well, none of that stuff was in MLS. So none of that stuff would show up in those stats. It's a mindset of what you want to believe. If you want to believe we have a lack of inventory because there aren't a lot of homes in MLS, well, then go ahead and believe it. And then you'll convince yourself that's why you're slow. But my top producers are not slow. They're rocking it right now because they don't buy into that.
Interesting way to look at it. And I'm in between houses, to be honest with you. I sold a house coming up on 2 years, coming up in July. And I put an offer on one. I killed the deal right away. It just didn't seem right. It just didn't seem right. I go with my gut. and I hadn't seen anything, so I rented a complex. It's all good for now. It's just every time I send that check off, it just crushes me with the price of rentals right now.
Yeah.
But I am seeing more and more signs going up. I haven't looked on MLS lately, but I'm seeing bing, 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 and maybe spring is the time where more things pop up. But I am. I would have to say probably 50% more, even in just by my visualization, even in the last 3 weeks.
Yeah. You will definitely see more inventory come on in the spring.
Okay.
No question. But if you're looking to buy a property right now, and this is part of what I teach my students, is tell the buyer that the odds are their house is not in MLS. It's not on Zillow. It's not realtor.com. It might not even be on the market yet. It might not be coming on the market for another month or two. But you know how to network with people to find out what they've got coming. And if that doesn't work, they'll call expireds or they'll call sale by owners to see if maybe something that expired might be a good match for that buyer. And I tell them, if that's not going to work, tell them you will, if they give you an area that they like, tell them you will go knock on every door in the area until you find somebody that wants to sell to the buyer that you already have. And when you do that, ask them, you think any other agents are out there doing that? And the answer is no. They're just, most buyer agents, if you're looking, they say, okay, here's what I'll do. I've got this software program. I'll put your name and email in it. And every morning, anything that came out yesterday is going to show up in your email. Well, there's a flaw in that. And that's because if a buyer is actually out there looking right now, they're sitting there with realtor.com open or whatever, and they just keep hitting the refresh button, hoping something new is going to come up. They already know what came out yesterday. I tell it as a story. You ever see those little kiddie pools in the backyards of some people's homes? I mean, sometimes it's just for the kids, sometimes it's for the dog, right? It's not,
Sure.
But how many fish do you actually see in the kiddie pool? Not many. You want to go fishing, go where the fish are. Right now, a lot of these buyer agents are just fishing in the kiddie pool. There's nothing there. You got to get outside your comfort zone and start working some areas that you weren't thinking about before.
I like your style. And I detect from you a buyer is golden. Yes, the seller is critical, but having a buyer, you'll go to the ends of the earth to find something for them that works. And there's a lot of variables, price, geography, style, all of that. But you really care. I can see it.
Oh, that's never been a question about that. That's, I like working the listing side. That's really where I made most of my money. But if I worked a buyer, I did everything and anything possible to find them what they were looking for. That's why it kind of cracks me up about, and I'm sure you've seen all the news articles now about the NAR settlement and how all the commissions are going to change and all that. Yeah, I love that. But they forget to mention something. Buyer brokerage has been around for more than 30 years. Now, most agents, if they even used a buyer broker agreement, didn't necessarily get paid by the buyer, which is what NAR was intending when they first started it. I've been using buyer broker agreements since the early 90s. And I never had a problem with a buyer paying me directly. And now they talk about, well, the first-time home buyer, and they're going to sell. The first-time home buyer is not the biggest part of the industry right now. They only represent about 30%. So 70% of the people not first-time home buyers, they've got equity, they've got money, and they'll pay you to represent them if you can show them that you're worth it. If all you do is put them on a software program and wait for stuff to happen, well, in my opinion, that's not worth it. But if you're willing to go knock on doors, if you're willing to do these other things, in addition to being a good negotiator, I think there's a reason people buy Cadillacs. And there's a reason people only stick with whatever, any of the entry-level cars. The people that buy Cadillacs or Jaguars or whatever, they understand value. And people have never been afraid to pay for value.
As long as you can demonstrate it.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's what I teach my students.
Do you find, your final question here, do you find that a lot of real estate agents, I'm going to tactfully put this, just get lazy? It's just, they don't want to do the work. They just, here's, let me look on, yeah, look, I see 3 houses on MLS for you. They're not pounding the pavement, if you will, or working their network to find those who may be selling homes or even thinking about selling their home.
Yeah, I think unfortunately that's a true statement. I think a lot of people kind of got used to the ride the way it was, and it's going to change. I don't think there's any doubt there are going to be some changes. But when they say, well, sellers will just sell on their own or they'll go unrepresented or whatever, sale by owners have been trying to sell their house on their own for 100 years. And there's about an 8% success rate. And when you look at an 8% success rate in the market we just came out of, when all you had to do was breathe that you were thinking about selling, and you got 18 offers in 48 hours. And yet these sale by owners still only have an 8% success rate. So I definitely think there's a need for good quality agents, for people that can show the value that they bring to the table. Actually, you know what? Value might not even be the best word. Unique. Showing what makes them unique, what makes them different. Find their own fiddle,
There you go.
So, and it works. I mean, you can't be in a position where you're thinking about giving up because of these changes. My mom used to tell a story about me. And when I was younger, I think I was 14. I was going through all these different classes at this lake that we lived near. And I decided I wanted to go to take this lifeguard test. And the class for the lifeguard, I can't remember, it was probably 4 or 5 weeks or something like that. And it was a grind. And they told me I shouldn't take it because all of the other guys, and it was all guys, women weren't lifeguards back then, all the other guys were like 18, 19 years old. And here I am, this little runt 14-year-old. And one of the things that they do is they get you in the water and you have to perform some kind of a life-saving movement. So it's wrestling is what it is. I used to get beat so many times. I mean, all these guys, they couldn't wait to get in the water with this little shrimp guy that, was nothing. And they actually suggested I quit. They talked to my mom about me quitting. And I said, no, I'm not going to do that. And they're like, well, you can't beat any of these people. And this is what's going to happen. Well, the week before we were supposed to end, I beat somebody. And it gave me so much confidence that when I took my final test, the next week, I beat somebody again. And ended up getting a lifeguard license. I couldn't use it. I was only 14, but I got it.
Wow.
And said from that point on, she's like, I just knew it wasn't going to matter what people would try to do to you. You'd never quit. You might lose once in a while, but you'd never quit. And she's right. I just don't. Yeah.
Love it. And you beat those two, and you got 6% commission on top of it. So,
well, I believe we set our own standards, and I think if you can show what you're worth, people will pay you. And
people
if you
will pay.
Then they shouldn't.
Yep. But we need training for that. We need coaching. It doesn't come naturally for most of us. Mike, best way to find you?
Oh, it's easy. MikeFiddler.com. 2 Ds. That's the easiest way. There's all kinds of links on there. I offer people a 30-minute free consultation. All they got to do is click the link. It'll take them right to my calendar. Any spots that are open, they're willing to take. And I'll sit down with them for 30 minutes and show them why they need a guy like me.
Love it. And you offer the value and the accountability in a nice way.
Yeah. I mean,
in a nice way.
I only work with people that want to work with me. I mean, I don't push people. I don't have long contracts or any of that other stuff. I help the people that want help, and it works.
Mike, great talking with you today. Something for everybody, whether you're going in real estate or not. I think we identified a lot here, and refreshing. Love your passion and all of it, and looking forward if we get a chance to talk again.
I hope we do, and I really appreciate you having me on. So,
Yep.
yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, Steve.
MikeFiddler.com. We'll be right back.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.